The quibble is simply that, when you say we are not sure whether Trump is right or left, I mean, I would say that, while many people say that the terms right and left have become meaningless, to me, you are right-wing if your primary concern is the defense of property.
Oh, okay.
And you are left-wing if your primary concern is the welfare of working people. It's work versus property. This is what it's all about. Okay. Now, and by work, I don't mean just paid work. In the working class, I include everybody who must work to make their living, whether they are paid for, whether they're employed or not, whether they are paid for it or not. So that includes, for example, the vast majority of women who do a lot of work, although many of them may not be employed, or care workers, or whatever you may want to call them. But anyway, so a lot of care work in our society is done without being paid for it, right? Whether it is the care of children, the sick, the elderly, etc. Anyway, but so to me, it does make a difference, and I would say that Biden is right wing, and Trump is in most ways even more right wing. Okay, because so that's the first thing. Secondly, Trump led the way. Forces like Trump led the way. What they started doing is essentially using any kind of rhetoric that would be necessary in order to get votes to win elections. So China, anti-immigration, etc. These are all ways of diverting attention from the real causes of the misery of the people and pointing in the wrong direction. And if you are, and I would say a lot of people, ordinary voters in America, realize completely what Trump is saying, and I have not voted for Trump, but nevertheless, enough people voted for Trump to put him in power once, and they might do so yet again. Who knows? And you have seen that Biden has not been able to give up Trump's rhetoric. He has had to sort of essentially grandfather Trump's anti-China as well as anti-immigration practices, if not the full rhetoric, into his platform, because if you are not going to point to the real culprit, which is a senile, financialized, neoliberal capitalism, then you have to point to some or the other false culprit. And China and immigrants are the false culprits, and he doesn't have anything else to point to. So he has had to continue to do the same. And so that's a second point I wanted to make. And a third point I want to make is that, of course, people are not dumb. As they say, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time. So what has happened over the course of the ability of the Republicans and the Democrats to control the American public is declining. And that means that no party can be absolutely sure of winning elections. And this process has now come to a very acute point. It reached one inflection point when forces like Trump arose, so that the Republican Party was no longer, the sort of the Republican Party of, I don't know, George Bush Jr. It became a very different Republican Party. The Democratic Party is still more or less the same, Biden, Obama, Clinton, they are all part of the same continuum, or they are the same politicians who capitulated to neoliberalism. So the change has come from the right, fine. But whether you are right or left, and the right, by the way, is more organized, because it seems as though Trump able to rely on a good 40% of the American electorate or something like that, that are going to vote for him. And what Biden doesn't know is whether enough of the rest will vote for him, because a lot of them will say, well, you know what, pox on both your houses, I'm going to stay at home. I'm not going to vote because you don't enthuse me enough. And that's been the Democrats' problem. Democrats have, they are tokenistic about getting the black vote and everything, but what have they done for African Americans and Hispanics and all of that? So why shouldn't they stay at home? So that's why you are seeing there's a very famous political scientist. Unfortunately, he passed away rather young, but he wrote a book called Ruling the Void. These parties are sort of ruling a void. They cannot really control it, but they are trying to get some sort of purchase on it. They're trying to control it, but they are losing their capacity to do so very quickly. And I think this process will only go further unless and until a force emerges that is able to name the problem and formulate a program to go beyond it. But name the real problem, not the false problem. But yes.
We've talked about this topic a lot on the forum, and I don't have a horse in the race when we talk about neoliberals, like who's more neoliberal, who's more right, who's more left. Um, but based on my own personal experiences talking to people, it's odd because I actually have easier conversations talking to Trump supporters about economics now than I do Biden supporters. I think there's there's also, it's almost like you have a group that's more all in the neoliberalism, and you have a right wing that doesn't know exactly why it's right wing besides some rhetoric points. But I feel like there's room to change those people over. I, I almost see the working class as like an untapped potential in the working class. So I've tried to reframe it in my mind and not see people as Trump supporters, Biden supporters. I just think people need some kind of a reset, and
Absolutely.
to where they can like be exposed to those ideas. But the problem is that the mainstream media is not giving them those ideas. They're all buying into this whole game of Monopoly. I mean, it's crazy. The probably the most popular board game we have, and I'm guilty of this too. I love playing Monopoly. You know, it's like Park Place and Boardwalk and everything. But it's like it's so embedded in our culture, and it's just like everything is just. I believe it's a moving target for people, and you have someone like myself that's a part of one of those visible minority groups. And it's like, I've seen the bullshit of Joe Biden. Like, it doesn't work on people like us. More and more Black people they don't care about Joe Biden anymore. And so the problem is that for those people, they don't see any other option. They see a difference as the other side, which will be Trump. They see anyone that's not Joe Biden as different. People like me who are politically homeless are like, okay, both of these people are shit options. So it's like, who else is available? I think there's just so much that's stewed in this gumbo, and that's why people are confused because they're
You
like,
know,
oh, that's Kiko's a socialist. It's like Radhika's like, whatever you would consider yourself. I'm not going to tag a label on you, but it's like I'm talking to a Trump supporter, and we're speaking the same language, but they have a different way of describing their experiences that I'm trying to describe to them.
but I mean, I think that I'll just pick up on one thing that you said, which I think is quite true and important. You said that it's easier to talk to Trump supporters because they are less wedded to the neoliberal ideas, and I agree with you. Why is that? Because Trump has sought to mobilize the discontents of neoliberalism. In his electoral rhetoric, he has had to identify some of the problems with it. For example, America's deindustrializing economy.
Mm-hmm.
He's right about that. And whereas the Democrats, they just think that a few more subsidies being shoveled in the direction of corporations and everything will be fine. No, nothing is going to be fine, not in this way. Because remember, what is neoliberalism? To go back to the point I was saying, neoliberalism is the commitment to defend capitalism even in its corporate form, especially in its corporate form.
Mm-hmm.
Even though in this form it has actually long been indefensible, but that is what you are doing, is you are so because Trump is challenging that, he is willing to say there's something wrong, we are deindustrializing, we have no jobs, we have to do something about it. But of course, when he gets to power, all of that is forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as Trump was elected, I even wrote a column about that. No sooner was Trump elected than all the corporate wagons started circulating around Trump, and all of them were trying to do their own little deal with them. And that's inevitably going to happen because the corporations cannot exist without the federal government giving them a lot of largesse in one form or another, whether it is friendly legislation or outright subsidies or particular tax loopholes or whatever it is that they want. But they need something or other. They cannot exist otherwise. So they have to do it, and they will do it. So in that way, both Trump and Biden are neoliberals. But rhetorically, Trump has to break the barriers of neoliberalism in order to get elected.